Welcome or welcome back. This is Pairs Well with Knitting. I'm Jennifer, and this is a knitting podcast all about knitting, yarny adventures, and travel. Thank you so much for joining me today and potentially for the year. This is a special episode celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the Pairs Well with Knitting podcast. I am so thrilled that you're here. We have special content coming at you today. Here's what the schedule will look like. We are going to be reviewing everything that I knit within the year of podcasting. I'm going over the highlights of the trips that I was so lucky to take while on my year of sabbatical. We're, for the first time, answering questions that I was gathering from Instagram about knitting and travel and myself. And then at the end, we have a little bit of a giveaway as a celebration. So sit down, get comfy. I think we're gonna be here for a bit and let's get it. So I'm wearing the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose. This is my only summer knit to date that I have produced for myself, I'll be clear, because I've done one for my mother. And I wore this on the very first podcast. So if you are seeing this again, there we are, it's the second time. This is in 2 strands held double of Pima cotton by Sabi. All the notes will be included in the show notes as always. I have to say, just quickly looking back before we get into all of the knitting and travel content, I can't believe we're here. I can't believe it's over 365 days of filming the first podcast, and I find it funny or ironic that I was waffling of even starting this. It was something that I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do this or was able and happy to start doing a podcast. And I have to say, I found great joy in doing it. And I'm so excited that we continue to be here today. So thank you. We are going to get this 1-year podcast anniversary started off by reviewing everything I knit within the podcasting year. So we're talking about July 2023 to July 2024. I'm going to be going over the breadth of what I knit. Details will be linked in the show notes, of course. And we're going to do a micro comparison between the data of this podcasting year and my 2023 knits to see, is it staying the same? Is it changing? I love this and I hope you do too. So let's do it. First of all, in the 1 year of garments, I have knit the Amy Slipover by Sandnes Garn, the Lou Genser, also by Sandnes Garn, Felix Pullover by Amy Christoffers, the Snowy Forest Sweater by Midori Hirose. I've knit the Weekend Slipover by Petite Knit. I've knit the Field Sweater by Camilla Vad, the Novice Sweater Junior by Petite Knit, the Press Virus Pullover by Amy Christoffers, the sweater that's breaking the sweater curse where I freestyled, the Ruffles Sweater where I took guidance from the Novice Sweater Junior Petite Knit and mushed it with my own calculations and techniques, and then the Champagne Cardigan by Petite Knit as well. 2 Wild Posy Flora sweaters designed by Melody Hoffman, the Moby Sweater by Petite Knit, the Magnolia Bloom by Camilla Vad, the Tulip Pullover by Melody Hoffman, the Jupiter Crop by Caitlin Hunter, and finally the Carl Johan Sweater by Pernille Larsen. You haven't seen this one yet. It's going to be coming out in my Norway videos. So excited about that. As far as accessories go, this is everything from hats, socks, mittens, that kind of thing. We're looking at the Biggie Hue by Petite Knit, Party Socks for the Love of My Life, designed by the Crazy Sock Lady, the Saturday Shrug by Jackie Rose, the Portia Shawl by Natasha Hornby, the Tegan Baby Hat with Top Knot, designed by Julie Taylor for Love Fibers. Then we have Favor Fingerless Mitts, where I've knit about 6 of those, designed by myself. Link below for the pattern, of course. I've knit 2 Cinch Shrugs by Jackie Rose. I have knit the Everybody Loves This Hat Deluxe Edition, designed by Faye Wolfs. I have done the Dainty Bubbles Mittens by T Sheep. I've knit the Brain Hat, designed by Elena Noritake. I have also done a freestyle beanie that I've just knit up myself. I have knit the Bugafleur beanie that I modified into a cowl by Allison Randell. I have also knit the Frida headband by Emily Lewis. I have done an electric cowl that I have freestyle knit on my own. I've also knit the framework bralette by Jessie Made Designs. I have knit party socks guided by the Crazy Sock Lady. I have also knit a micro shawl that was inspired by Petite Knit and Amy Gillet. And then finally wrapping up, I have knit the Sophie scarf by Petite Knit. Let's pull that data into some graphics for fun to see what is like actual content visually of what I've knit. So first of all, if we look at what I've knit for within the year of knit podcasting, the majority of items I've knit is accessories. I figure they're really tiny. They never seem like I'm knitting a lot of them. I'm always working on sweaters, I feel. And that's actually what the Love My Life said too. He's like, that's odd, you're always working on a sweater. Sweaters are big and they take a long time. Accessories, I'm usually knitting out of the house as I'm traveling or commuting. So in total, I've knit 16 sweaters this year. Vests have been 2 and accessories have been 23. Looking at sweaters, if we do quickly of my 2023 totals, this is everything I knit within that year. I knit 13 sweaters, 3 vests, and 23 accessories. So we're slightly up on the sweaters, which is interesting, but I've also gifted a couple of them this year, which is also pretty cool. Types of yarn I've used. So what I've done is I've looked at everything I've knit that included everything that I just talked about, and I classified into what kinds of yarn have I used. I've broken it down into rustic, soft, unspun mohair, and plant fibers. When I'm talking about soft yarn, I'm talking about either like a merino, where it's an actual soft breed of sheep, or it could be like a superwash. So looking at that data for the types of yarn I've used within the podcast year, rustics have been my most popular yet again, from 2023 at 49%, whereas if I looked at my last year knitting, it was 50. So I mean, there we are, we're pretty much the same. Mohair, I was knitting with just under 11% of the time. This was usually, sorry, my nose is so itchy. I've included it with another yarn as well. So it's 2 strands of something held together, one being a mohair often. Although I have knit one item that was mohair only. That was one of the Wild Posies with the Biche and Bouche Le Gros mohair. So yeah, 11% of the time. Last year, in the 2023 year, was 17%. So I actually went down with mohair, which is interesting because I actually thought I knit more in this chunk of time. Plant fibers, I did not knit at all with finished objects. I do still have a whip that is on the naughty chair, and we will see if we'll ever get to it. I'll get to it. I just haven't yet, because plant fibers are not my favorite to work with. This is true. Soft yarns, we're looking at 32.7%, which is a little more than last year, but then if we think about gift knits, that's probably why. Moving into yarn weights, these are the yarn weights that I've worked with that go from, I've grouped together lace and fingering. DK is a separate classification. I've grouped together worsted and Aran just for simplicity, and then like a bulky or chunky weight. The majority of the time is looking like I would knitting with worsted and Aran at just under 40%, which if we look at last year with 2023 is pretty much the same at almost like 38%. Looking at other options, my DK percentage has gone up, so I've knit more. Oh no, yeah, slightly more, 27.5%, whereas last time was 24.3. Chunky yarn significantly went down. I'm knitting under 6% of chunky yarn in 2023, just under 11%. So I'm a little less chunky this year, which is interesting. Fingering, often I'm not knitting, or I think ever, knitting with just a fingering yarn. I usually pair it double, but I had to classify it as a fingering weight because technically that's what it is. And I still consider that pretty high at 27.5, although technically it would go as a DK weight. So I think if I really continue to analyze this, the majority of the time, or I should say even half almost, maybe more, I'm actually knitting with a DK weight, if you will, because I'm gathering the two strands or fingering together to make a DK weight gauge. There we go. The next thing and final portion that we're looking at for what I've knit in the podcasting year is garment attributes. So eliminating all the accessories, but just solely focusing on sweaters and vests and what I have knit up in general to see what the majority of the garment that I'm being attracted to, what does it classify as? So the vast majority of the time it looks, I'm being attracted to solid colors, which is one type of colored yarn that's used throughout. Not changing it, not like color blocking or adding in different techniques per se. It's all one color. That's up from 10% from 2023. So I guess I'm increasingly going for that simple design, if you will, which is interesting because I feel like I've been very attracted to not as simple knit garments in the most recent present. Looking at texture, that is my next, I guess, highest piece. These are textured yokes, so wrap stitches, anything that gives a 3D motif at 14%. Looking back in 2023, the texture was 25%, so that's gone down quite a bit. Color work is almost 12% that I've done, and color work was only 6 last time. So I've already increased my color work, and I'm not surprised on that because I feel like I've just started getting in my color work phase, which is awesome. Cables, I've done 9% of the time. Cables was about 6 before, and I have really enjoyed knitting with cables. Making cables has been fun with the shawls, the sweaters. It's really been an interesting knit for me. And the last is lace at 4%. So these are things with like yarn ovary type holes, and that was very high last time, 12.5%. So that is what I have knit during the podcast. I feel like obviously I've had that huge luxury of time not working and enjoying my sabbatical and traveling, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I love knitting, and I feel like this year it's definitely showed. Side note, I also had a point of knitting a little too much, because sometimes too much of a good thing can be just too much of anything, which is really sad. So I've experienced knitting pain or injury, and I've just been really mindful. I've talked about this in the past podcasts as well, of what I have done to try to improve or reduce the pain or symptoms that I experienced from a lot of knitting. And we're sitting really pretty, which I'm really happy about, because it means I can continue my very favorite thing. We are now going to be looking at where I have traveled during this year off and feel incredibly lucky to have done. First of all, the day that I podcast my very first episode, we were actually heading out on our first road trip. This was, we called road trip 1.0 of 2 we did this year that were down east. So the majority of the time, if we chunk it, we're looking at the US, and we stayed in Maine and Vermont for the majority of the time. And back in Canada, heading back north, we were in Nova Scotia and then New Brunswick. The highlights were vast, but really distilling it with the favorite things that I did during those places in that time included whale watching in St. Andrew by the Sea, a visit to Shelburne Farms in Vermont, attending various lobster shacks, going to Peace Cove on a rainy day where we were one of the only people there, going to the Nova Scotia farmer markets, and finally attending Minister's Island in St. Andrew by the Sea. The fiber highlights are vast as well. Some of the highlights include Fia Yarn Shop in Halifax, as well as the Loop, going into the studio and meeting the maker at Le Havre Weaving Studio, going to the Briggs and Little Mill in New Brunswick, and going into Harrisville Design Studio in New Hampshire in the States, and 2 more, going to the Green Mountain Spinnery in Vermont, and finally going to the Cashmere Goat in Maine. I mean, it was the beginning and kickoff of a lot of yarny adventures. Then we ventured to Owen Sound, Ontario for the Cobble Beach Concours d'Elegance car show. That was fun, and that was the highlight that's non-fibrous. The fiber highlight included Riverside Yarns and Meaford Wool from Spruce Havens Farm. Fantastic and super local to Ontario. We're moving into road trip number 2 or 2.0. This was the Rhinebeck trip. So this included bits and bobs of the Hudson Valley in New York, as well as Nova Scotia, and finishing off in Quebec City. And the highlights just, again, I'm like, there were so many. This included the Catskills Park, Hayne Falls, the Knot Pub, which is in Lunenburg. Just fireside knitting everywhere in the fall, which was incredible. Joining the local gym in Lunenburg, because we were there for such a period of time, and making a friend. Eating poutine in a blizzard in Quebec City. I mean, it was stunning. Fiber highlights were so vast and included, of course, with the major highlight of attending the Sheep and Wool Festival in Rhinebeck, which was really the driving factor for making this road trip 2.0, in my mind, of course. Meeting the makers, the farmers. It was the first time that I ever attended Rhinebeck, and will not be the last. It was just awesome. I also attended Wool and Folk on the Friday. Then, I mean, of course, one of the major highlights for me, of course, meeting the makers, the knitters, the dyers, the designers, just mind-blowing, was also the sweater parades. I loved, for the first time, being in a big group of people and seeing people wear their makes. I love it. It was just such an inspiration. Going to the Mariner's Daughter, which is a yarn shop in Lunenburg. Going to Chocolate River Yarn Fibers, and the Coeur de Mai, which is a yarn shop in Quebec City. Just awesome. Moving on to Mexico. We were in Mexico for a period of time, and there we went to Puerto Vallarta, St. Miguel or St. Miguel de Allende, and Mexico City. Highlights included, of course, walking along the beach and the walks along the cobblestones in St. Miguel. Coffee in St. Miguel was a whole, they had their whole path of delicious. It was awesome. Meeting the makers at the markets of St. Miguel, and then going to the Templo Mayo Museum in Mexico City. Amazing. And again, if you want to see any of the highlights and more, I've done videos on all these places I've gone to with details, links, and footage of where I've gone. With this, the fiber highlights of Mexico included the Fabrica La Hora, which is a maker market, Kathy's Yarn Shop in St. Miguel, and knitting poolside and within the cafes. It's just always my favorite to knit in public and on the go. We then went to Montreal, Quebec, and there it was to host an interview with the two lovelies from Sabatical, Naomi and Steph, and that was for the podcast. So had fun and gave me just a beautiful excuse to go to Montreal. The highlights, of course, there were Montreal and bagels in Saint Viateur. Fiber highlights, of course, was the nitty chat that I did with the Sabatical ladies. It was awesome, and feel so lucky that we had that time to do that. I also went to La Maison Tricotée in Montreal, also another yarn shop, super cute. Moving around now into more Ontario, I went to Waterloo, which is the city that I was in for 4 years during my undergrad. The highlight was kind of a personal growth piece for me, going back to the city where I did my undergrad, which I hadn't been to in like 20 years, I'd say. There we go, showing my age. But the fiber highlights, it was for the Ontario Spinners Seminar. And so it was my first time ever exposing myself to spinning. It was amazing. So this was the debut of my spinning journey, which I have very much started with drop spindles, and who knows where we're going to be taken with this. I attended workshops with Katharina Forbes and making new fiber friends. This is always the highlight for me of the knitting journey that I am doing, and I guess fiber arts now in general, is meeting people with a similar passion for fiber arts knitting. It was just so heart-filling. It was awesome. The final piece of the travels, which I cannot go into detail enough, and I will be careful, is Norway and Switzerland. We've just returned a couple days ago from that adventure, and it was spectacular, exceptionally yarny. I will be careful to go over the highlights because I'm going to be coming up with probably 2 videos because there's just so much to review and show and share of the excitement and what I experienced well over in Norway and Switzerland. I would say the highlights, non-fibrous, that included those 2 countries, were walking the mountains, just my favorite, the floating sauna, the Norwegian Historical Cultural Museum, and walking the Limat. The fiber highlights included walking all over Oslo to check out the yarn shops that included Garntopia, which was a major highlight. You're going to hear so much about it. Going to the Hillesvåg Mill. I mean, my knitting dreams totally came true. And attending the Textile Industry Museum. It's just, I cannot wait to share all about this. Now I'm going to go into the fiber events I've participated in this year, which I'm really happy about and proud, rather than just being a maker sitting at home, which I feel like I very much was before, which is fine. Depending what you're wanting, I wanted to start building a community, exposing myself, and I very much did. So the fiber events I participated in this year of my podcast year included attending Fiber Spirit in Barrie, Ontario, going to the Woolen Folk in Catskills. Yep. Attending, of course, Rhinebeck with the Sheep and Wool Festival in New York. Multiple knitting events that I attended at Unit here in Toronto that included a meet and greet with Emilia and Philomene, which was very cool. Hosting my own cowl, and first and only cowl knit along that I did. It was a Holiday Shrug Club cowl. That was very cool. I attended a brioche class, my very first knitting class ever, with Kate Atherley. That was at Yarns Untangled in Toronto. I attended multiple knitting events as well with the knitting loft that included knits from the local yarn shop with Naomi and Steph from Sabatical, as well as the launch from Geraldine and her team at the Wandering Flock, and multiple Sunday knit circles. Just awesome, and I'm so excited that I'm so close and local. I released my very first and so far only pattern of Favor Fingerless Mittens, but probably not the last. I attended Knit City Toronto, which was really cool, and I attended that with Emily from High Fiber Knits. It was spectacular, so thankful for that. I finally, wrapping up, attended the Ontario Hand Spinning Seminar that I talked about in Waterloo, and then multiple knit nights in Toronto. It's just been spectacular. So super, super knitty. So now we're going to get into the questions that were posed on Instagram about all the things: knitting, travel, me. All right, let's do it. I've never done this, so we're going to do it. Just to preface, I sent out separately within a couple weeks' time the question of what would you like to know, because the knitting podcast is coming up to a year, and so I put it out there. And so Instagram folk got back with questions. These are the answers. So what I'm going to do is I've tried to curate, like I've linked up very similar questions, either based on the same theme or pretty much the exact same questions, so I can answer it all nice and little bundled, packaged together. And I will be answering every question. I didn't just like my profession you're going to hear about. I don't want to leave anyone out, so we're going to be super inclusive in all of this. Yeah, get cozy. Here we go. kind of makes me a little nervous to answer some of these, but I can do it. We can do it. First question is, what is the most memorable thing you've done while on sabbatical? This was submitted by Garfoot Joanne. So my most memorable thing of this sabbatical year, I have to say, was making friends through the love of making. It was a lot of making things, and of course, a lot of that joy for me in producing and that passion is making a connection or making multiple connections. And I feel like I did so much this year within not only Ontario, within social media community here on the podcast, but physically in person. And I think a lot of that is stepping out of my house, which, I mean, that's not hard for me, but I think because we all came off of that pandemic-y time, that I hadn't done that before in my making experience. And this year, having the time, I did, and it was just a delight. I feel like I have fiber friends now, and it warms my heart because we share passion, and these are good people. Like, the fiber community, the knitting community is the best community. Most open, loving, caring people. It's been a joy. Also, within the most memorable thing I've done is also growing as a person and a maker myself, settling into my confidence even further. The second question is also coming from Garfa Joanne. And again, the wording is exact wording from the lovely people that submitted the questions on Instagram. What have you learned about yourself during your amazing sabbatical year? And I have to say, I have deepened my understanding even further of who I am. I feel like I've always really understood who I am as a human, but I feel obviously having the time to really think about, reflect, analyze, even more so right now, of course, of who I am personally and professionally. My core values, I realize, have started changing over time as I do. Of course, there are still some that are true to today, but from years past have slightly been modified. And learning how I can continue to align what I do and the decisions I make to allow them to align to my personal values. My next question is, and there's actually three that are pretty much very similar, so I'm going to answer it all in one shot. The first question is coming from Carol Rahul. What is your profession outside of knitter podcaster? I've also been asked by lovejoy.deb, and I have spent the year guessing what type of work you do. Fun year. And then from 55 Knit, I was asked, what is your occupation? So for those of you that do not know, I'm a teacher in public education in Ontario. I've done this for 17 years. I've taught everything from K to 9, special education, health and phys ed, homeroom, biology and science. I've taught so many different things over the years. And in Ontario, we have this option that is, I feel like no other, but many other teachers that are unionized do have this as an option, where you can do a self-paid leave after a certain amount of years. So I had applied 5 years ago to this sabbatical for self-paid leave. It was accepted. And so this was in the works for years. This was the year off of that self-paid leave. And it was definitely a beautiful choice for me. I loved it. The timing couldn't have been better, I think, with where I was and what I wanted to do. And I have just fully enjoyed. Question number 4 is a combo from Almaty Lords and Leslie MC 133. They have asked, are you still on sabbatical, and will you be returning to your teacher job after sabbatical? Also, will you be going back to work, teacher? So yes, right now I'm currently still on sabbatical. This is our summer anyway, so this would be the time that I would have off in regular life outside of sabbatical or not. And I will be heading back as a teacher in September. I'll be heading back into the classroom in August to prep and prepare, and fully teaching again, back to regular life in September. Next up on the docket, question number 6 is, how long have you been knitting? That was provided or asked by Wool Noodle, and I have been knitting since 2019. I was inspired by a girl on a train. I was heading out to go see friends just outside of London, and this chick was knitting up a sock with fingering yarn on DPNs. Of course, I knew nothing at the time. I literally thought she was a magician. We talked for like the 2.5 hours that we were on the chain for, and she very much inspired me to start knitting. She gave me all the right direction of how to start on my own, and that's how I got into it. 2019, technically. Question number 6 comes from Redhead Mama 77, and they ask, where do you get your color inspiration from? I have to say it's a combo of what's pulling my heart, what do I want to knit, and the season. So I think for me, I'm a very driven person with color, of seasonal colors. So for fall, I'm super pulled to rust oranges, olive greens, khaki greens, that kind of thing. In the spring and summer, brights. I mean, I just love the bright colors and bright color combos. And I think for color combinations, I love pairing silly colors together that I think would just be a joy to knit within my hands. But then also I can pair them with something really simple to wear, so they're like a loud bright knit on top and then something really simple and calm on the bottom. Love that. So that's my answer, my heart and the seasons. The next question comes from Stephanie Lynn Williams, PhD, and they ask, most challenging knit, most fun knit. I also had, oh no, that's it, yep. Yes, so my most challenging knit to date within the podcasting year was a Portia shawl by Natasha Hornby. That one I think was such a challenge because I modified the pattern so much and had a very limited amount of yarn. I had 3 skeins, and if you recall from the past episode, I really had to modify. I took away entirely like the whole border that was part of the design feature from the designer and made it totally different, but I love it and it works out so well. I've reknit it so many times while I was trying to figure out what to do instead of a border, and simple ruled the end because I ended up doing an I-cord cast off. Anyway, and another most challenging knit, ironically, was a Petite Knit pattern. It was the Champagne cardigan. That is because I did not have gauge at all and had to recalculate for the entire cardigan. I also had never knit a cardigan before, so it was kind of a double whammy there. And it was really unpleasant to knit, actually. I didn't enjoy the process. I do enjoy the finished garment, but next time, I mean, now I know the construction of a cardigan. I don't think it would be as challenging, but I didn't find it fun because I was ripping out incredible amounts. And I think I was almost ripping out more than I was knitting, if that makes sense. My most fun knit to date within the podcast year is a Jupiter crop by Caitlin Hunter. I think it is just a hoot. It's that really crazy colorful one that I came up with. That did pose challenges, of course, but I actually enjoyed the process. I found such rhythm in creating the color work and watching the motif grow. I liked how I felt like even though I took the design and the charts from the designer themselves, from Caitlin Hunter, I kind of got to play with how things were going to look on the sleeve, and I love making it and I love wearing it. It's awesome. Next question is by Vanessa Kind. She wrote, your favorite knitted item. And I have to say it's the Wild Posy Flora by Melody Hoffman. This was in particular only because I've had more time with this sweater. It's the version I knit, because I knit 2, with the 2 strands held double of Lettlopi. It's a delight, and it traveled with me to Norway as well. It's such a neutral knit in color. It's that light ash gray, crazy warm because of the 2 strands held double of unspun yarn, and fits beautifully. It was a delight to produce. I knit it in my time of Mexico because we were there for like a month, 5 weeks. So I knit it entirely cast on, cast off within that time. And so it also has all these memories of Mexico, which is interesting. Yeah, totally favorite knit. I love it, love it, love it. Question 9 from Nitsy Frizzy. She or they ask, what motivated you to podcast? I've also coupled it with a question from Alan Makes Things. What made you start podcasting? I love your content and so glad you did. So nice. Thank you. It's lovely. So I said the motivation for me was literally having a year off. It was having that time and space, a brain space, an actual time space to make this, to produce this, to learn about podcasting, to share the joy of knitting with other makers. It really allowed structure to my year and allowed me to obviously go in my comfort zone and learn a ton of new things. I mean, I think when I had started, I thought it's just going to be me sitting in front of a camera and, you know, figuring out and chatting and posting it. Like, it can't be that hard. And I'm not saying it's hard, but it took a lot of time to learn all the bits of how to do it, from like starting to film to the end of like putting it out to the viewers. There's a lot of steps. There's a lot of things to learn that nobody really talks about. I mean, that could be a whole episode on itself because it's intense. For me, I found it was intense and there was a lot of learning because this doesn't happen in my normal life, personally or professionally. So it was a big step up of understanding of how to execute a podcast. Yes. The next question, number 10, is by Nitsy Frizzy again. She or they asked, do you have a target or mission for your channel? My vision has always been to share the joy in knitting to other makers and the fiber arts, is literally sharing my passion and happiness with you. So I hope it also is giving you as a viewer happiness as well, with a side note of maybe inspiration. Maybe it's allowing you to choose a different yarn than maybe the designer had have paired with the pattern. Maybe it's allowing you to think that you can think a little more freely and openly about making your own makes. Yeah, I think it's just trying. I would like to think that this is a channel where we're finding joy together. Also with the travel piece of going to places even multiple times, but doing fun and different things each time to experience joy. I think that can be really great. Yes. Okay. Sorry. I'll press on to the next. Question number 11. And this is the final one from Nitsy Frizzy. Lots of questions, which is awesome. Has asked, how long does editing take? This was also coupled with her question, what equipment do you use for your videos? Cameras, software. So my answer for editing is too long. I don't like editing. It's actually my least favorite part of podcasting. I love preparing content and sharing and chatting with you. I really don't like the having to sit at the computer and toggle and edit. I find it's a drag and it takes me way too long. I think for the folk that can shoot and just have it go and then stop it and post like, congratulations. Maybe that has to be my objective next year. I find I'm quite critical of myself. And so I do find I'm reshooting, I am editing, I'm pulling in like B-roll, which is like other like photos and videos. It takes time. And it takes quite some time. The second part of this question was about equipment. So what equipment am I using? I'm using my iPhone. Keeping it super simple, but does a good job. I have a mini little tripod that I use. I have been gifted from the Love of My Life a giant one, but it's way too big to lug around. I also, because when we do traveling, I do try to podcast as well. So the little tripod gets brought with me. If you want to know what kind it is, reach out. I can let you know. And microphone. A microphone for where I live is essential because the sounds that we hear all day are a lot. And this dulls out the background noises. I'm talking sirens, people yelling, cars honking, streetcar noises, construction. I haven't even talked about this, and I don't know if you want to hear it. It's like funny, like podcasting things that happen in life, is that I can be prepared, like mentally prepared and excited to be shooting an episode. And I'll get myself all ready and I'll haul out all my knitting stuff to share. And then it's like cement day at the construction site, like on our street. And so we have like a train of cement trucks that go in and out, that are really loud. They've got the cement like blower thing. It's a lot. So as a girl that podcasts from the downtown core of Toronto, having the microphone, 100% essential. That is my equipment, that is all. Very portable, tiny, but needed. The software I use is just iMovie. I've taught myself how to use iMovie this year. It's pretty simple. I find it really inefficient. I don't know if there's something better out there, but that is what I use. Next up is a question from Knitting Vida, and they ask, or just statement, upcoming travel plans. So upcoming travel plans for me is one more trip in August in the good old Canadian coast. You'll be hearing about that soon. I'm visiting a friend in Chicago even sooner. I would love to attend Rhinebeck, but have not solidified plans on that because of teaching again. So I will see what we can do to try to attend. And then of course a winter holiday, because winter holiday is always needed. Next question comes from Vanessa Kind. Your favorite knitted item. Also, Sabrina Ramgroup has asked, what's your favorite piece that you've knitted? To date, within the podcast season, or I should say year, has hands down been my Wild Posy. This is a design by Melody Hoffman, and I feel like I cannot stop talking about it because it was such a beautiful thing to knit on. I cast on and cast off within our trip to Mexico. I also wear it a lot. This is 2 strands of double in light ash of Lettlopi. I've been corrected on how to say it, so my apologies. And it is so wearable. It is such a neutral color to wear, which again, I'm not a big neutral girl, but I understand why people love it. And it's been a delight. My very favorite knit. Your favorite yarny adventure trip. This comes from C. Curie Designs. So my favorite, they're all my favorite, but I have to say Road Trip 2.0, which was our road trip down east and highlighted Rhinebeck with sheep and wool. It was spectacular in all the ways, and that was the time that we spent the majority of the time up in Lunenburg, where I joined the gym and really felt like almost part of the community outside. It was amazing, my very favorite. I also have to couple it with my Norway Switzerland adventure that we just came back from, and there's just so much goodness. My heart is still super nice and full from that trip, and will be for some time. I cannot wait to share all about that trip and just the delight of being there and being able to experience the country. The final question of today and first year podcast anniversary is a mush of 3 questions from Lovelies. The first is, what is the plan for the podcast after your sabbatical is over? That comes from W. Stewart Fox. The next is from Fru Line Shirley. What after your sabbatical gear? And last is from Knits Frizzy. Will you continue? So I will continue my podcast, and I'm so excited to do so. It will look a little different, and I think with timing that I will have and how I'm going to want to allocate my personal time, which I start working full time again, will be different. So one, I'm going to be podcasting bi-weekly. So my objective will be to have out 2 episodes a month instead of 4, which seems much more doable to me and still brings me all of that joy without that heavy hitter of having to edit and add potential stress on, because I want to find and continue to find this is a real happy place, and I have for me. I never feel like I have to do this. I want to do this and I want to continue that. I don't want to make it a work piece for myself. I also am hoping to reduce my editing time. So I'm telling myself right now that this may mean less takes of filming, which means less editing as well for me. We're gonna see, because I know once I start and I fumble on words or I don't like it and I refilm, I think I'm going to have to accept my mistakes a little more in the future for next year with podcasting, which means I'm going to ask you as well to do the same with me, where you're not getting seamless sentences and there will be bits and bobs that are maybe a little less beautiful. Yes, but the theme will still be the same with knitting, travel, and yarny adventures, because that's not going away. We are still going to be knitting up all of the things and traveling. Just because school is starting again, I'm still traveling. I'm still doing things. They're just at very specific times when my profession allows me to. We are going to wrap up today's 1 year of podcasting with a giveaway. So excited to share. If you wish to participate in the giveaway, all you have to do is comment below. You can comment about, maybe share what your favorite episode has been this year, share a piece of something that you might have enjoyed or have questions about for the 1 year podcast anniversary. It could be really anything that you want to bring to the fiber community online here. And I'm going to share what the prize is. So 1 entry, of course, per person will get shuffled around. 3 will be chosen, and you will get 2 things coming at you. 1 will be your copy of the digital pattern by myself, Pairs World Knitting, that is the favorite fingerless mittens pattern. This has 2 yarn weights, and I'll show you very quickly in case you do not know. There is a bulky weight edition, all housed under 1 pattern that is for bulky weight yarn, and just really simple little mitts that are created to give your hands some fun and coziness. Maybe not so much in the summer we're getting in Toronto, but maybe where you are or later. And it also comes with the worsted weight edition, which is obviously a lighter yarn weight. Same idea, but both weights are housed under the same pattern. So it's like a 2 for 1. With a copy of the digital pattern, winners will also receive 1 of 3 yarn options getting sent out to them. The first is Rauma Finull. This is a gorgeous Norwegian rustic yarn. It's a very heavy fingering, but paired double, you do get a worsted weight, which is exact yarn and colorway that I use for my absolute favorite pair of fingerless mittens. The colorway is a number at 4686, and I feel like it's just the most wonderful shade of pink. I adore it. It's a cool pink, super fun. And I don't know if you can get this anywhere, maybe, but I also feel like it's a nod to my Norwegian trip. The next yarn prize will be the Lettlopi. This is an Istex yarn, very rustic with long guard hairs from Iceland. It's absolutely one of my favorite yarn brands, and this color is Galaxy number 1707, and it's just got the most wonderful hints of color within the yarn of golds, fuchsia, turquoise. It's so fun. I have a whole sweater knit in this. This is a fresh, gorgeous ball that I've been hanging on to, but I feel like would make such a stunning pair of mittens with a little blip of fun. That's for one other prize. And the last is Topsy Farm yarn. This is a very Canadian yarn coming from Ontario, from Amherst Island. It is in the colorway C3. It is a worsted weight, again, perfect for the favorite fingerless mittens, and is a ton of yarn. It's 110 grams, so you can easily get 2 mittens out of this guy. And it is in like a really, I don't know I don't know what kind of color to call this. Deep, cool purple? Yeah, I know. I'm like, do I need bins in this? Maybe I do. So that is the third prize, in order, of course. So we have a Norwegian yarn, an Icelandic yarn, and Canadian yarn, and I felt like it was a really nice breadth of rustics, international rustics, to make favorite fingerless mittens. So please comment down below, and I will draw in a couple weeks' time with the winners. Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for hanging out and for continuing to be here after that. If you appreciated this episode, I ask that you like and subscribe, of course, to the channel to keep us going into the new Piers World Knitting year. And if you are feeling it even more within yourself, I invite you to click down into the Ko-Fi account where the link is, and you can consider donating a coffee to me in the channel. Thank you so much. I hope you find great joy in your knitting today and every day and any fiber art you are doing, and we will see you until next time. Take care.